So joining us now is Mike Davis. And Mike, thanks for being with us. Let's focus a little bit on John Brennan. What are your thoughts about potential criminal charges against him?
You and I, Greg, have been talking about this for years. And the Justice Department, it seems, according to the Fox News reporting, is opening up a criminal probe on this. What happened was that in 2016, Hillary Clinton's campaign and Hillary worked with the Obama White House, including President Obama himself, Vice President Biden, the CIA director, the FBI director Comey, Clapper, the Attorney General. They made up the Crossfire Hurricane investigation to go after President Trump. They lied to the FISA court. They used the Steele dossier with evidence they knew was false. They got spy warrants on the presidential candidate, Donald Trump. They continued to spy on the president when he won office, when he was in the White House. They hobbled his presidency because they alleged that President Trump was a Russian agent, right, which is just insane. And they did this, in my view, because Hillary had her illegal home server as Secretary of State with our nation's most classified secrets, but more problematically for Hillary, she had the Clinton Foundation pay-for-play foreign bribery scheme evidence, where the Clinton Foundation is taking millions of dollars to underwrite the Clintons' lavish lifestyle, and maybe, just maybe, Clinton's doing official acts in exchange. She bleached bit in her server. She destroyed the phones with a hammer. But what she didn't expect was that foreign governments, adversarial governments like Russia and China and others, probably hacked her server and had a copy of that. And they were afraid that server was going to come out before the 2016 election and destroy her campaign. And so what did they do? They made up the Russian collusion hoax. So if that server information did come out, they can blame President Trump and his campaign and say it was a campaign dirty trick. And you say, oh, that's crazy. How could you possibly think that? They did the same thing in 2020 with Hunter Biden's laptop. They had 51 former intel officials work with the CIA saying that this had all the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign. So they were able to ignore the Biden family bribery, tens of millions of dollars, and say it was a campaign dirty trick. That's exactly what they did in 2016 with Hillary's home server. They obstructed justice by doing this. This is the biggest scandal in American history. You had President Obama, Vice President Biden, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, the presidential candidate, the head of the CIA, the head of the FBI, the Attorney General, all conspiring to lie to the FISA court to make up the Russian collusion hoax to help their candidate, Hillary Clinton, and try to take out President Trump. And this is ongoing lawfare against President Trump. The Mar-a-Lago raid was to go get back the declassified Crossfire Hurricane records that President Trump declassified and took his personal copy before he left office.
Yeah,
2021. That's what this is all about.
You know, not only did John Brennan state publicly that he never put eyes on Steele's dossier until December of 2016, which is simply untrue. And he also said, I never shared it or briefed it. He did. He briefed the Gang of Eight on Capitol Hill in the summer of 2016. And then in August 25th, he went to Harry Reid and briefed him. And Reid, it was a setup. Reid sends a letter to Comey accusing Trump of being a Russian agent. And they leak that letter to the media. And, you know, the New York Times and the Washington Post are off and running. Here is, let me play a quick soundbite of John Brennan talking about the Steele dossier. Here it is.
Do you know if the Bureau ever relied on the Steele dossier as part of any court filings, applications, petitions, pleadings?
I have no awareness.
Did the CIA rely on it?
No.
Why not?
Because we didn't. It wasn't part of the corpus of intelligence information that we had. It was not in any way used as a basis for the intelligence community assessment that was done. It was not.
We now know, Mike, that's completely untrue. It was in the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment. How do I know that? Because I saw it. And so, I think that's one of the many deceptions that the lawyers at the Department of Justice are looking at, don't you think? Mike?
Yeah, it would have to be what the Justice Department is looking at. That would be a key predicate to open this investigation, is that perjury. And I also want to remind people, even though this Crossfire Hurricane criminal conspiracy or alleged criminal conspiracy started back in 2016, and you say, oh, that was, over 8 years ago, that's beyond the 5-year statute of limitation. Remember, with conspiracy, the statute of limitation does not end until the last overt act of the criminal conspiracy. So this is an ongoing criminal conspiracy. This is an ongoing cover-up, and the people involved with this alleged conspiracy have not disavowed the conspiracy. So the Justice Department absolutely can pursue charges for conspiracy.
Yeah.
There's not a statute of limitation issue.
No, there isn't. And also because if there's fraudulent concealment of the incriminating evidence, that tolls or suspends the statute of limitations. And beyond that, the most recent testimony by Brennan was in 2023, just 2 years ago. And there's a 5-year statute of limitations that's standard on false statements as well as perjury. So if he was lying 2 years ago, there's no limitations problem, is there?
Not at all. And again, stepping back, let's not lose the forest through the trees here. This is the biggest scandal in American history. You have a White House working with a presidential candidate to politicize and weaponize law enforcement and intel agencies to go after the other presidential candidate to make sure that he doesn't win the election. And unfortunately for President Obama and Vice President Biden and the Attorney General and Comey and Clapper and Brennan and the rest of these guys allegedly involved with this criminal conspiracy, they missed. And President Trump got into office and he declassified those Crossfire Hurricane records, and they missed again when they tried to bankrupt him for non-fraud, throw him in prison for life 4 times for non-crimes, throw him off the ballots. And even when Trump's opponents defunded his Secret Service, underfunded his Secret Service protection, and President Biden said to put a bullseye on Trump's head after Biden said he was the gravest threat to American democracy, an existential threat. So they missed every time. And now they are going to face accountability from the Justice Department, as they should.
Not only that, John Brennan at one point in time claimed that Trump had committed treason by virtue of being a secret Russian agent. And then when the Mueller report came out that day, he was asked on television his reaction to it. And he said, gee, I guess I had bad information, and I thought there was more there than there really was. This was the CIA director, right? He's the top spook. He's supposed to know more intel than anybody. And yet he said, oh, gee, I guess I got bad information. I mean, that's pretty absurd. I want to turn to James Comey, because here's the thing about Comey. He always hated Trump. I'm not quite sure why. I mean, I know that, he hated Trump's policies. He hated Trump personally. He thought he was uncouth, thought he was rough. He didn't like the whole MAGA movement. But here is Comey being interviewed about his negative opinion of Donald Trump from the start, which is why I think that really motivated Comey to launch Crossfire Hurricane. Here it is. Take a listen to this.
It seems to me that in your dealings with Donald Trump from the very get-go, from your first meeting with him before the inauguration in January of 2017, you, very far from bringing a blank slate to your view of him, to your meetings with him, you were deeply suspicious and skeptical of Trump from the start. And that comes out clearly in your recollections in your memoir.
Sure, that's because I'm a human being. That's not a political judgment. I evaluate people who work for me. I evaluate people I work for.
With respect, it becomes political if you're, from the very get-go, likening the way in which Trump deals with you into a mafia don, a mafia boss. I mean, that's not just personal. That becomes political.
I don't see it as political. I didn't think he was...
The director of the FBI concluding that Donald Trump, from your earliest meetings, is, in essence, the political equivalent of a mafia boss?
Sure, not in the sense that he's robbing banks, but in the leadership culture he creates. That's what struck me. But that's not a political judgment. That's a judgment based on reason and logic and experience.
Some of what you write, and I'm guessing it's based on contemporaneous notes, it is actually just downright personal. Some of the asides about, you know, his look, his hair, the size of his hands, which you were making observations like this in the very earliest meetings with him, suggest you had an animus towards him.
Yeah, I reject that. If you read my book, you'll see I'm actually trying to be an author, and as an investigator, I have a pretty good eye for detail. So I describe my high school boss, I describe other bosses, I describe people I worked with in great detail. And so, yes, I noticed Donald Trump's hair color, how he dressed, how he sat, how he spoke. That's not a political judgment, that's an observation.
But it smacks of a negative opinion that you brought to the table.
I had a negative opinion of him that was fact-based. I had serious concerns about his ability to respect the obligation to tell the truth.
All right, it wasn't fact-based at all. We found that out if you read the Mueller report. It was all made up by Comey and Hillary and Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS, Perkins Coie, the law firm that, was funneling the money to Steele. And Comey never talks about how he fired Steele for lying, another deception to the FISA court. But that was an interview by a very good host on BBC. And Mike Davis, it speaks volumes about James Comey. He comes across as a total weasel, doesn't he?
Yeah, and remember this. Remember, it was James Comey who was in the January 4th, 2017 Oval Office meeting with Obama, Biden, Susan Rice, Sally Yates, the Attorney General, and they talked about making up the Logan Act. Biden, remember, raised the Logan Act. This was in Peter Strzok's notes from that meeting, and Biden used the Logan Act. They had never prosecuted under the Logan Act, and they used the Logan Act as a bogus pretext to go after General Flynn and to go after Trump as part of this Russian collusion hoax. So this idea that Comey was just a Boy Scout who had an open mind before President Trump went into office is nonsense. They sent Comey into the Trump White House in the early days to try to set up a perjury trap on this Russian collusion hoax. This is, again, the biggest scandal in American history. There is clear evidence that the prior regime and their intel agencies and law enforcement tried to take out a presidential candidate and then tried to take out the sitting president of the United States and then tried to take him out again after he left office when they figured out he was running again.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Logan Act, which doesn't allow private citizens to interfere in American foreign policy, but it is common, as I wrote ad nauseum, not just in my two books, but in columns for Fox News and my own website, that incoming administrations always talk to foreign leaders before the new president takes office. There's no Logan Act violation. So, Comey and the others just made that up as a pretext to go after Flynn, to go after Trump. I mean, one of the many phony pretexts that they invented to go after Donald Trump. And it should be so blatantly obvious to just about anyone. Mike, hang on for a couple of minutes, if you will. We're going to squeeze in a quick commercial break, come back, a couple more questions.